everybody, welcome to sunny Spain. I'm Sean and welcome to my man shed. Something a little bit different. You see, I've decided that I want to build myself a Dalek. I'm not the first person to do this, but I wanted to do mine a little bit different to what's being seen on the internet. I'm sure a few of the guys have done it a very similar way to me, but I haven't seen much of it. You see, most Daleks that I see, they tend to be made out of wood and fiberglass and great construction materials. But I wanted to make mine out of metal. In fact, I want to make it out of aluminium. It's a little bit different to what a lot of guys have been doing out there. Am I a Doctor Who fan? Yeah, you could say I'm a Doctor Who fan. I'm not a massive Doctor Who fan though, like some people are. I kind of enjoyed Doctor Who. I did when I was a kid, and I did a little bit later in the 90s with my kids when the new series came out. And I enjoyed that much the same way as I enjoy a lot of my other favourite TV programmes. What are the reasons then that I want to build a Dalek? Well, there's a bit of a secret, you see. Since kind of the 1990s, when the new series Daleks were introduced, I promised the kids I'd build them a Dalek, and they were about this high, about this big when I promised them. And I said, we'll do this. Will be a like father-son, father-daughter bonding project. And they were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, Dad. And fairly typically for me, I think, and maybe for some other dads, it never came off. We talked about it a lot, and there was always something going on, or when we get into the next house, and when I've finished sorting out the man shed in there, and it kind of never came off. Now, my son now is nearly 20, and my daughter's 17. And it still hasn't happened. My son's left home, my daughter's still here. So kind of very much in the vein of getting these promises, Daddy promised you, we're going to make a start. Do I want to build a Dalek to own a Dalek? Well, not really. That's not really my motivation. I know there's a few of you guys out there, your goal is you want to have a life-size Dalek, and I get that. But for me, it's not that. It's more about the engineering project. I just fancy having a little hobby, something to do, to play around with. And I thought it'd be a good way of getting creative. You see, I've spent a lot of my time, my life as kind of a scientist, and I've had this drive for a while to do things that are a little bit more creative. So hence the reason behind the Dalek build, and hence the reason behind the video. So how are we going to build it? Well, as I've said, I want to build it out of aluminium, mainly. Not all the construction materials are going to be aluminium for obvious reasons, but I wanted to try and stay with light metals and alloys as much as I could, but I'm going to have to use other construction materials as well. Now, I'm going to be starting this build today by building the base, and the base kind of reminds me of the bumper on a Dodgem car. This is the thing that gets wheeled around and bumps into a few things, so it needs to be fairly durable, and I kind of thought if I make that out of something like aluminium, it's going to get dinged and bent fairly easily. So if I made it out of a stronger steel, like a mild steel or something like that, it's going to be very, very heavy, a little bit cumbersome. So I actually decided to build the base out of wood. That's kind of the only thing that I wanted to build to include wood in, is this wooden base. I want to make it fairly heavy in construct, so it'll take a lot of banging and crunching around. I had the idea of building this out of some kind of wood or medium density fiberboard or something like that, and then covering it with a little bit of a thin rubber coating. Now, a lot of this project is going to be ad hoc as we go along. I haven't sat down and planned the whole project out in advance. I've been planning little bits in stages, and I think every week the direction might take a different turn. So how are we going to start with the Dalek? Where are we going to get the dimensions from? Well, that's not too difficult. I remember looking back in the past, there used to be an organisation or a website called the Dalek Builders Guild, I think it was called back then. And I think that's changed now, if I believe correctly. They're now Project Dalek. But they're an online community and a forum, and between them they've kind of created plans for Daleks. They're very much the dimensions, more than the actual building plans, but some of the bits and pieces get quite intricate. Now I'm going to take the dimensions that are given through that resource, But I might alter a few things as well. You know, it kind of gives you the overall dimensions, but the way that you achieve those dimensions is very much up to you. Although there are some standard ways I've seen other people do. So the first thing is then, let's talk about the base and how we're going to construct it. And I was going to construct it initially out of medium density fiberboard, MDF. And I actually went out and bought some. You know, here in Spain, where I'm living at the moment, wood's quite expensive. That's another reason to stick with aluminium. But it cost me about €37, you know, for this couple of pieces of MDF. Not very much at all. Less than a 2 440 by 1 220 millimeter sheet of MDF would cost you in the UK. And I had that kind of cut into two sections that I could then cut out very simply and to make kind of a sandwich to make the top and the bottom of the base. But when I picked the MDF, I picked 10mm. I thought 10mm would be thick enough. Probably will be, but looking at it, it looks quite thin. And I really wanted this base to be quite solid and quite heavy. It's going to be the platform that everything else goes on, including my quite girthy stature. So I have I've got some plywood that's resin impregnated plywood, I believe it is. I brought this back with me from Australia when I lived there. And this is about 16mm thick, much heavier, and I think this will make a better base. So I've decided now in retrospect to use that MDF maybe for something else to do with the base, but the actual main construct of the base be at the MDF. So how are we going to go about this? Well, a couple of ideas first of all in planning. This is the base, and the instructions give you the overall outside dimensions. But we've got some choices to make because they'll give you you know, this, not a diameter, is it? This width. They'll tell you how wide it is, but they don't include in their dimensions the thickness of your material, if you've got edging material, etc. So you've kind of got to work that in. So I have to make a decision whether, when I make this as a sandwich of two boards, whether I actually have the material between the two boards here, kind of here, or whether I have it facing the boards, and that's going to affect the dimensions, the way that it's built. And I think I've decided that I'm going to do this sandwich, this board in between here. This, I believe, is going to be at the base is going to be 90mm. So you'll see how that fits together very shortly. The first thing to do is for us to cut this out to exact dimensions, the way that the Dalek plans, the new series Dalek plans I've got, suggest the outside dimension should be. So we will cut that out first. That will be the bottom template. So that's the way that we're going. I guess we've got to start. Well, the old adage goes, measure twice and cut once, and I did a lot of measuring, but somehow along the way I still managed to make a couple of mistakes, and I couldn't figure out where I kept making these mistakes, but when I rechecked everything, things didn't quite line up the way that I thought they would. So I decided to go back to the drawing board and draw myself out some plans that made a little bit more sense to see them at the work table. Now, I was trying to use my laptop and read the Project Dalek plans, which are very good and they're very accurate. But I found that flicking backwards and forwards between the different diagrams that Project Dalek have on there, I think I was making a few errors by picking out the wrong dimensions from the wrong diagram. So what I did is I created this. I hope you find it useful. So you'll see this gives me the exact measurements that I need to make for the lines and to give me the contour of the bottom of the Dalek base. So I use this contour I drew it out with pencil. I then decided that I wanted to try and cut it out, and the ideal way of cutting it out would be with a bench saw, you know, with a circular bench saw. That's not something I own. I know a lot of you guys in the United States, you tend to have those in your little hobby shops and things. People like me from Europe, we live in little houses and we don't have room for those kind of things. So I decided to try and use a straight edge as a guide to guide my jigsaw. And this seemed like a cunning plan, but it didn't work out as well as I hoped. The problem is with jigsaw blades is they move. There's nothing to hold the bottom of them, and I found that even though I'd got the guide, the line wasn't running true. I do have a piece of equipment kicking around somewhere in my man shed that's designed to go around. It's like a big U and hold the bottom of the jigsaw. It has kind of a guide to be able to do straight cuts along edges, but that's buried away somewhere. I didn't know where it was, and I wasn't going to spend hours trying to dig that out and find all the pieces for it. So after I didn't get on very well with the jigsaw using a guide, I decided just to carry on, rough cut it, make sure that I didn't make any cuts that were on the inside of the line, and then I used an electric plane to clean up the edges, and that works really well. The plane the edges up perfectly to the line, and I had a perfect Dalek base, the bottom section of the base. So the second stage then is to build the middle section of the base. Now my base is going to be a sandwich of three pieces of wood, 2 pieces of plywood, top and bottom, and in the middle some MDF. And I wanted to make the MDF section. The reason for this is from the bottom of the Dalek base to the intermediate section is a vertical edge, and then from that edge to the top of the base is an angled edge, so we have this kind of shape, and I wanted to create this center section to create the vertical to create a vertical edge. So what I did, it was very straightforward, is I just drew the outline out on the MDF that I'd cut out onto some 10mm, on the plywood that I'd cut out onto some 10mm MDF board, and I followed the same process. I jigsawed it out and then planed the edges straight. I clamped both pieces of wood together to make sure that the final shave with the plane brought the 2 pieces of wood to make them identical shapes. But the last step in this part was to make the top. Now the top of the Dalek base is slightly smaller than the bottom, allowing these angled edges to meet it. So what I did is I created another one of those diagrams. You'll see that here with the dimensions for that base, and I used the same process of cutting it out with a jigsaw, making it a little bit rough and wider, and then shaving it down with the plane. And again, I got an accurate cut. I was quite pleased with it. So now we have 3 sections. I've actually put some wood between the sections just to support it, to have a look at it. I've got 18mm bottom section, 10mm top section. That whole base bottom half of the base section is 90mm, so 62mm pieces of wood I've just roughly cut out just to hold things into the position that they're going to be. And you'll see the little sandwich here that I've got that very shortly should be a Dalek base, and that's where we've got to so far. So that's when I'm going to end the video. Next video we're going to finish the base by adding those edges to it, and we need to cut those out, measure them, cut them out neatly, and create a base. And then we're going to decide whether we're going to cover it. I've thought about using textured paints, covering it in rubber. I don't know. I'm going to go down to the local DIY store and see what might work well there. In the meanwhile, thanks for watching this video. If you're enjoying this, then please hit the subscribe button. If you clank that bell icon too, you'll get notifications when I make the next video. In the meanwhile, I've got to thank you all very, very much for making it to this part of the video. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed things. Leave me a comment down below if you've got any questions, or if you've got any suggestions as well. I'm all ears, especially if you've been through this process before yourself. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.